here at Railroads, we always start our presentations by acknowledging the lands our university is located. So here at Railroads, we acknowledge that our campus is located on the traditional lands of the Kusepsum and Lekwungen ancestors and families. There has been a long, long history of teaching and gathering on these lands, and it's with great gratitude that we live, learn, work, and play on the lands of the Kusepsum and Lekwungen ancestors and families. So my name is Selena Kunar, and I'm here to help navigate us through this conversation about the School of Leadership Studies. And we are so lucky to have the director of the School of Leadership Studies, Dr. Catherine Etmanski, joining us for today's call. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here with you today. Nice to see all of you.
We'll be chatting with Catherine much more once we flip through a few more slides. But before we do that, we want to chat a little bit with all of you. So if you feel comfortable, let's take the chat box for a spin. Clicking the chat box icon in that black bar below, your chat box will open. And this is a great time to share with us, if you feel comfortable, where are you joining us from today? What sector are you in? And if you like, what are you hoping to learn from today's session? This allows us to get an idea of who's in the room with us today and make sure that the information we share is helpful to all of you. So I see the chat box getting busy, and while those intros come in, let me take a quick spin through how we're going to spend the rest of this hour-ish together today, this afternoon. So next, we're going to head into a quick exploration of the Royal Roads University experience, head into talking about the School of Leadership Studies, and take a look at all of the different programs offered through the school. Cap off by talking about the admissions and application process associated with these programs, and then close the formal session and get into a conversation. And this is where we'll be able to dive into any questions that come up throughout the session. While we're leaving time at the end of the webinar for our questions and conversations, please pop them in the chat box as they come up for you, because we'll be doing a good scroll through before we get started with the questions. And speaking of a good scroll through, the chat box is alive. So let me scroll through quickly and let's see who we have with us today. So we have folks from Victoria, Calgary. Lots of Calgary and Victoria. Very fun. Folks joining us from all different sectors. So healthcare, outdoor leadership, immigration services. Folks from Ontario, Prince George, BC, Edmonton. Folks working within the post-secondary education sector. Lots of healthcare. How wonderful. Thank you all for everything you are doing in these very extraordinary and turbulent times. We have Chilliwack represented, Campbell River, Oshawa, Surrey, View Royal, that's just a stone's throw away, Mission, Vancouver. Wow, we have folks spanning all across Canada. We have representation from Whitehorse, very cool, Saskatchewan. So please continue to take a peek in our chat box to get an idea of all of the folks joining us from across Canada, and I'm sure beyond as well, and the different sectors coming together today for our discussion. So now that we've learned a little bit about all of you, we want to tell you some of the things that we value here on our campus. And that starts with all of you. So here at Railroads, we have something called first names first. It's so important to us that you are not a number, you are you. Right off the bat, from your support team, such as myself or the enrollment advisors you'll see in our chat box, through to your support teams within the school and your teaching faculty and Catherine, you'll know everyone here is excited to know who you are, why you're here, and how we can support your unique educational journey. And the only way we can do that is start by learning your name. What's really wonderful about my experience here as a learner at Rural Roads is I have yet to complete a class and not leave or leave without knowing my professor's name and my professor knowing my name. And that's been a very unique and wonderful experience here at Rural Roads. Speaking of our teaching teams, we're so lucky that they allow us to have what we call real world classrooms. So our classrooms are led by faculty who are what we call scholar practitioners. So folks who are not only academic experts in their fields, but out in the world putting into practice what they're bringing into our classrooms. Some other folks you'll find in your classrooms are your cohort members. So many of the programs here at Railroads subscribe to the cohort learning model, which means you start your program as a team and you move through it step by step together all the way through to convocation. What's so exciting is so often I meet alumni who share that years past graduation, their WhatsApp chats, their Facebook groups with their cohort members, they're still alive. They're still going for dinners, they're still meeting up. And that is just amazing. So while your experience with your cohort members may be bounded by the time of your program, it truly is lifelong. And these connections you make can stay with you forever. And finally, life is an education. We'll talk about this a little bit more in the back half of our webinar when we explore the application process. But here at Railroads, it's important to us to take a holistic look at our learners. It's not just your academic background we're interested in knowing about, it's your professional background, your personal background, all of the things that have come together to make you who you are today. And we reflect that in our admissions process, which you'll see a bit later. And we'd like to give you a quick snapshot of the power of our place. We like to have a peacock somewhere in our presentations because that's a nice treat for folks who come see our campus and find these beautiful creatures running the town. There's been a meeting or two I've been late for with a peacock by the door, and it just adds to the life on our campus. So taking a peek at the top left photo here, we have a sort of aerial-ish view of our campus. You can see that we have Hatley Castle centered within our space. Its claim to fame is that it's in many films such as X-Men, Deadpool, and a few Disney things as well. So if you're recognizing it, that may be why. But looking beyond Hatley Castle, we have many different buildings here that comprise our campus space. A little beyond this photo, you would be able to see a beautiful array of curated gardens. So looking at the top right photo here, we have a picture of our Japanese gardens. These gardens are well loved not only by students, staff, and faculty, but our greater community as well. Another thing beyond our aerial view is Esquimalt Lagoon. Esquimalt Lagoon is very busy as well. It's a certified bird sanctuary, so there's lots of fun critters to meet down there. And finally, looking at the bottom right photo, we wanted to depict online learning because while we have this beautiful physical space, the power of our learning transcends this physical location and very much moves online. Rural Roads has been teaching online for over 25 years, and we were well poised when these turbulent times hit to make sure that our students, staff, faculty were able to move their learning environments from on campus to fully online due to the pedagogy and technical capacity here at Railroads. And we'll talk a bit more about what online learning looks like in each of these programs shortly. So with that, I will pass the microphone over to you, Catherine.
Thank you so much, Selena, for that wonderful overview of our campus and our style of learning here at Royal Roads University. So as Selena said, my name is Catherine Etmanski, and I have the pleasure of serving as the director of the School of Leadership Studies. It's wonderful to be here with all of you today. And I will do my very best to cover the range of programs that we have in our school. I took note in the chat that many of you are interested in understanding the differences between the different specializations and the different programs that we have in order to help you make a choice. So I will cover that in the presentation. I'd like to ask for your patience. I'll try to get through maybe about a dozen or so slides here. I'll try to zip through them as quickly as I can. And then there will hopefully be an opportunity for you to ask some questions toward the end. If by chance I don't get to your specific question, or my colleagues, Alana and Tracy, who are helping with the chat here today, the enrollment advisors, feel free to follow up. There will be some contact information at the end. We'll get an answer to your question, whether it's today or as a follow-up to today. So Selena, next slide, please. You can see that this one gives you an overview of all the different kinds of programs that we have in our school. And there should be a little sliding bar in the middle of your screen. So if you want to make that a bit bigger or a bit smaller on your screen, you should be able to adjust your view on Zoom. But generally speaking, today I'll be speaking about the suite of programs under the umbrella of the Masters of Arts in Leadership, or the leadership programming. So that includes a multi-sectoral master's degree that is run 2 times per year. It includes a graduate certificate, which comprises the first 3 courses of that master's degree and is taken in conjunction with that master's degree. It also comprises 2 specializations. So there's a health leadership specialization that runs in the fall. And then there's an executive leadership specialization that's actually due to launch. Our first launch is happening in 1 month's time. So today is actually the application deadline. I saw that a number of you were interested in that. So if you were hoping to start this year, you might want to jump into the application process if it interests you as soon as you can today. And otherwise, you might be looking at next year's entry at this same time next year. As part of the executive leadership specialization, there's also a graduate certificate in values-based leadership. So that comprises the first 3 courses of the executive leadership master's specialization as well. So that's everything that falls under the umbrella of the Masters of Arts in Leadership. And then we have our suite of programs related to global leadership. So again, I'll be getting into the nuances of that later, but generally speaking, there's a graduate certificate, a graduate diploma, and a master's degree. And then we have different offerings. We've got a blended offering, which means face-to-face residencies and that are online, and then the rest happens. Excuse me, I'm getting my words mixed. Face-to-face residencies that are 2 weeks. There are these 2-week intensive programs. And then the rest of the program is online. And then we also have, launching new this year, we have a fully face-to-face offering, an on-campus offering of the Global Leadership Program. So of course, that will all be dependent on where we're at with the global pandemic. With the vaccines now rolling out, we're hoping for the best, and we're hoping we will be able to launch that on-campus program. But I'll say a little bit more about that later on in the slide deck. So next slide, please, Selena. Yes, so this is just an overview of the Masters of Leadership program. As I just explained, I'll be talking about the 2 suites of programs, starting with the Masters of Leadership. Next slide, please. So why study leadership? We're talking more generally about some of the competencies that we see as embedded within leadership skills. Many people come to this program when they're at that point in their career where perhaps they are looking to advance to the next level, and they're facing a barrier, or they're feeling they need some new skills to be able to move into that next level of leadership. Some people are looking strictly for an academic credential. Many of you are familiar with our flexible admissions process, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. So we value your real life leadership experience, and many of you might be looking You may not have had an undergraduate degree, so you're looking to have a degree that actually meets the level of leadership where you're currently at. So there are a number of different reasons why you might study leadership, why you might turn to this school for that purpose. And you can see some of the skills that you'll be developing include personal and team leadership, communication, systems thinking, organizational change. We like to take an intersectional perspective on diversity and inclusion. And these days we're paying particular attention to BC's signatory on the, upholding the United Nations Declaration of Rights for Indigenous People, and also the recommendations that come from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's findings, as well as for those of you in the health sector, the recent report on systemic racism in the healthcare sector. And we're really paying attention to how this, the implications for leaders. And toward the end of the program, there is a capstone action-oriented inquiry where all leaders are invited to step into a leadership project to lead positive change in your community or organizational context. Next slide, please, Selena. So as I mentioned, there's the Masters of Arts. It's a 2-year program. It's blended, as I said, which means there are residency periods. Now, during the pandemic, we have had to convert those 2-week intensives into an online experience. However, we're hopeful that by this time next year, everything will be back to face-to-face. At this point, our summer cohort will still be in the online environment, and we're hopeful that the fall will be back to campus. But again, we're still just kind of figuring out the details there. Leading in uncertainty is a skill that we teach in this program, and it's right now a skill that we all have to practice, given the uncertain nature and the complexity of leading during this pandemic. So embedded within this master's degree, as I mentioned, there's a graduate diploma and a graduate certificate. So the grad certificate is the first 3 months of the Masters of Arts. So that is a pretty clear cut. If you would like the graduate diploma, the length will vary because you have the option of taking a few different kinds of electives. And you also have the option of laddering in other graduate certificates from elsewhere across campus. So then the length of the program would depend on which electives you choose, and potentially even which other graduate certificates you choose to combine with the graduate certificate in leadership to make up the grad diploma. Next slide, please, Selena. So here are the core competencies: personal mastery. These days, creativity and innovation, these aren't just buzzwords. These are essential for figuring our way out of the complex challenges that we all face. Of course, we're looking at strategic leadership and increasingly looking to collaborative approaches to leadership. No longer is the heroic approach to leadership where we're only looking to one person in a hierarchy to be our one leader. Of course, those positional leadership experiences still exist, and many of us work in hierarchies, and yet increasingly we need to figure out how to work together and collaborate to move change forward. As I mentioned, there's an engaged inquiry, an action-oriented inquiry component. We're looking at systems change, and of course, because this is an academic program, we're always looking to evidence-based scholarship as one of the core competencies. So the year 1 courses lead 5 to 6, 5 to 7, and 5 to 8. These 3 courses are also the graduate certificate. These are so interconnected that you don't even know which course you're in. They all take place inside one Moodle site. Moodle is the learning platform, the online learning platform that we use. And so you're never quite sure which course you're in at any given time, because all of the content and the competencies are completely integrated, as is the residency experience for that term 1. By the time you leave term 1 and you move into 516, for those of you who wish to continue in the master's program, 516 is a fully online course. It's a concepts and theories of leadership course. And then you choose an elective, either 517, which is a self-directed study, or 519, which is also a self-directed study, but it's focused on approaches to research that help move positive change forward. And we typically recommend that people who would like to pursue a thesis option as your capstone completion for this program take this this directed study that focuses on action-oriented research. We typically run another elective for those who don't want to do something that's more self-directed. So right now the option is 511, strategic analysis, decision-making, and evaluation. We might change that from time to time. So it really depends on which program you apply to, but for the time being, that's what we're offering. And you also, in consultation with the program head, you would be able to choose another elective that works best for your particular line of study that you'd like to pursue. And after that, next slide, please, Selena, you would come into your second residency term, which again is blended 3 courses, 626, 627, 628. Again, you're in one Moodle site, so you're never quite sure which course you're in at any given time. This is where you really spend a lot of time thinking about organizational and community change and learning a number of different methods to pursue that change and designing a capstone project that you would like to pursue. So again, then following that second residency term, you have 2 options. You can pursue a project together with a completion, a reflective course at the end, LEAD 680, or you can pursue a thesis option, 690. And we can get into the details of that down the road, but for the time being, just know that you have the option of a project plus a reflective course or a thesis to wrap up your program. So that's about it for the Masters of Arts in Leadership. I think the next slide, Selena, speaks more about the specializations. Yes, so I noted a number of you, probably about 5 or 6 of you at least, had mentioned in the chat that you were interested in the health specialization. So here you're taking all of the same courses that I just mentioned for the Masters of Leadership, the multi-sectoral program. But the difference is that all of your cohort, so everybody else in the program, has a background in health, and we would switch out a few of the readings. So there would be some that are, you would have all of those more general leadership readings, but in addition, you would have a number of very specific to the health sector readings and conversations. And because the Royal Roads model invites you to bring in your real world experience, all of the conversations and the examples that you would be bringing into the conversations, whether that's on the Moodle site or in the face-to-face residency, all of those conversations would somehow relate to the health sector because all of your colleagues in that cohort are working within the health sector. And likewise, we choose instructors who have a background in health as well. So I'll just say here that for those of you in the health sector, you actually have a choice. You can choose any of the specializations. You can choose the health leadership specialization, or if you have the requisite number of years as a mid or senior level leader in healthcare, you could actually choose the executive leadership specialization, which I'll speak about in a moment as well. Or you could choose the multi-sectoral option if you would prefer to be in a setting where you're not only with healthcare leaders, when you're with people from a range of different sectors. So in the chat, I saw people working in arts and culture, the nonprofit sector, outdoor leadership, many of you from higher education, some of you from banking, some of you from social justice. Often we have military members, we have police officers. So there's always a range of different people from different sectors. And as a health leader, if you would prefer that multi-sectoral option, you can also select that as well. So I'm just going to call on my colleagues, Alana and Tracy, to pay attention to the chat, because while I'm speaking, I won't be able to answer the questions in the chat. But if there's anything else we need to come back later, I trust that Tracy and Alana will alert me when we come to the question period at the end. So next slide, please, Selena. So here we have the executive leadership specialization. As I mentioned, today's the deadline for application for this one, and it starts in a month's time. So the executive leadership specialization has some tailor-made content, specifically the first 3 courses are also what we call the values-based leadership certificate. And there is a unique, just as for to get into the health specialization, you need to have health leadership experience. For the executive leadership specialization, we are looking to see that you have a number of years as an executive leader, either at the mid-level or senior level in an organization. And this is because there are particular kinds of conversations and particular kind of content. Whereas in the multi-sectoral offering, we see leadership a little bit more holistically, more broadly. We recognize that leadership can take place in any setting. For the executive leadership specialization, we're really looking that applicants will have the required numbers of years in a position of leadership. And here we're focusing really on building some tools for leading organizational change and specifically culture change. And there are a number of tools that are introduced using the values-based leadership focus to help your organization to identify your values, to identify areas of growth, and really to help your organization live into the espoused values, the values that you would like your organization to have. And that helps to build an organizational culture shift. So that's really the focus here. And Selena, next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, the values-based leadership certificate ladders into that executive leadership specialization. So now we'll turn our attention to the suite of programs under the global leadership heading. Next slide, please, Selena. Here we have, well, why study global leadership? So I noticed many of you are coming from the higher education and the nonprofit or immigrant serving sector. And so as we know, in a sense, we're all global leaders, although some of us pay more particular attention to that. And, you know, global leadership, certainly in higher education, those of us who work in higher education know that we are having conversations with people all around the world almost on a daily basis. And so it's not only that we from Canada go out into the world, but the world is a global in nature. You know, our conversations are global in nature, and we understand that there may be Canadians who are working abroad, or maybe international students who are interested in coming to Canada to have an international experience. So there are a number of different ways in which we can conceive of global leadership, and really we're looking at how to lead within complex systems in ways that enhance the well-being of communities and the planet, both today and in the future, recognizing that we are all affected by what takes place around the world, no matter where it is that we live. So next slide, please, Selena. So here we have, as I mentioned, there are a few different options here within the global leadership programming. For the master's degree, there's an intensive option, which is a 13-month. Both of the options are 36 credits, but it's just a matter of how you move through the program. So you can move through the program a little bit more quickly by doubling up, taking a couple of courses 2 at a time, or you could take the 2-year, 24-month program. So either way, you're taking the same courses. It's just a matter of whether you're taking the expedited route through. And as I mentioned earlier, even though my tongue got a little bit tied, I hope you understand that there's the blended option, which combines face-to-face and online. And then there's the on-campus option. And to be honest, the on-campus option also has some online experiences as well, because we want everyone to have the capacity to learn in that online environment. And we'd like to bring the cohorts together. So those of you who are in the on-campus option have the opportunity to interact with those of you who are in the blended option as well. And so there are a couple of courses that are done together in the online setting. And this is supplemented by some face-to-face plenaries that take place on campus as well. And all of these are launching in September, will be our next offering. And then, here we can arrange a thesis by special agreement, but the two standard completion options are the project, or in this case, an internship is the unique way that you can complete the Masters of Global Leadership. Now, again, embedded within these, there's also a diploma, which is a 10-month option blended with one residency. And there's also a graduate certificate, which again has one residency experience as well. So there are a number of different pathways through. You can start off, I think I saw a question pop up in the chat for the graduate certificate in leadership as well. So much as with the certificates I mentioned earlier, the grad cert in leadership, the grad cert in values-based leadership, and same with the grad cert in global leadership, you can start in this program, and if you decide that you like it and you would like to continue, that just automatically ladders into the Masters of Leadership, and you can continue going through with your cohort colleagues and complete the master's degree if you'd wish. Or if you'd like to wrap it up at the graduate certificate level and then reapply later, we will be able, as long as it's within a relatively short time frame and the credits are all still the same, we would be able to transfer those credits in, and then you would just pick up where you left off in the master's degree. The residency is 2 weeks long. And next slide, please. So here, this is, this is a chart that sometimes is helpful for people to understand how you would go through each of the different options. So you go through together in 501. So this is the on-campus and the blended students. You go through together in 501, together in 505, and then you start to be able to differentiate between whether you're taking the on-campus electives or you're pursuing the online electives. And then, the second residency term, you come back together again, and then you make your choice as to whether you want to pursue a capstone project or an internship. And this applies to both the blended and the on-campus students. Next slide, please. And so those of you who are you may have a reason for wanting to pursue an expedited or an intensive pathway and get a master's done a little bit more quickly in 13 months. Here, this just shows you that while you're taking 501, you're only focused on 501. But then when you take 505, which is the blended residency term, you would also take one elective at the same time if you wish. Likewise, when you move into 610, so you do back-to-back residency terms, you take 505 and then you jump into 610. And actually, I'm just seeing this now on this particular chart. We're redesigning that second residency term, and we've added another course in there. So this would actually be 2 courses for your second residency term, and then you could also take another elective. So you can see it just intensifies your workload. So you would need to be sure that you had carved off enough time and space for yourself to be doing this at an intensive level. And then you would jump into your capstone while also continuing to finish your elective options. Next slide, please, Selena. Here are a couple of photos. So in the past, we have been able to do a field trip to Ecuador. Of course, with the pandemic, unfortunately, we were not able to do a field study, but we are trying to design a virtual field study. The pandemic has forced us into, created some parameters for innovation for us. And so we are actually endeavoring to do a virtual field study with our colleagues in India. And so again, we'll just see how that turns out and whether we'll be able to offer that this fall. But we are moving away from the field study in Ecuador, and we're moving to creating one in India for next intake. So as soon as it's safe to travel again, we'll be offering that in-person field school, hopefully in India. And if that's not possible, then we do have a backup option that we're designing as a virtual field school. Somebody is asking about, yes, so accommodations is extra. Thank you, Alana. So back over to you, Selena, on how to apply, and then I'll start reading through the chat to see if I can find some questions to come back to later. Otherwise, over to you.
Amazing, Catherine. Thank you. Oh, you were able to give us such a comprehensive overview of all of the programs in such a short time. Please, you owe yourself a couple glasses of water after that. As Catherine mentioned, we're going to spin through the application process now, but this is a great time to pop any questions that came up for you as we heard about all of our programs in the chat box. So to kick us off, we like to share our admission requirements. Earlier in this webinar, you heard us refer to something called flexible admissions. And this is where we're going to talk about that. So here at Royal Roads, we have two different admissions pathways, standard admissions and flexible admissions. And on this slide, you can see how they differ a little bit. So for standard admissions, our Master of Arts, Graduate Diploma, and Graduate Certificate in Leadership require a 4-year or comparable undergraduate degree from a recognized post-secondary institution with a minimum GPA of a B+, and as well as normally a minimum of 5 years of leadership experience, though consideration is given to emerging leaders. You'll notice there that we have a little asterisk beside the word leadership. And that's because if you head to our website, you can see a really wonderful layout of all the different things that we can consider leadership experience. So it doesn't always have, sometimes absolutely there it is formal titles, formal letter positions of leadership. But for us, leadership really can be roles, also volunteer roles where you find yourself consulting, negotiating with others, managing diverse interest groups in fast-paced, changing environments. Roles where you find yourself leading others towards shared goals and outcomes. So take a peek at our website to get a better understanding of what we mean when we say leadership experience, because that definition is a really wonderful guiding point. Flipping to flexible admissions. So flexible admissions is for those folks who may not satisfy the traditional academic requirements, but have absolutely been in their field learning and leading for years and years. At Roll Roads, there's such a power to our classrooms and to our cohorts in that we're able to create environments where there's no division between theory and practical application. And that's why it's important to us to make sure that that's reflected in our application process as well. So for our Master of Arts, Graduate Diploma, and Graduate Certificate in Leadership, flexible admissions requires at least 10 years of professional experience with 5 years of leadership experience. Then we have a note here sharing that applicants who are assessed under flexible admissions, which includes those folks who do meet the degree requirement, but perhaps not the GPA requirement, will normally be required to take academic writing and critical thinking, which is a course we offer here at Royal Roads through our Division of Continuing Studies. And you'll need to obtain a minimum of a B+ in that program, in that course before starting your program. Academic writing and critical thinking is a well-loved course on our campus. I believe we now have intakes of that program almost every month, if not a couple times a month, because many of our programs, particularly for flexible admissions or for folks who feel that it may have been a little bit of time since you're in a classroom last, this course really ensures that you're set up for the greatest success and you have a solid foundation for academic writing, the types of critical thinking before beginning your graduate studies here at Royal Roads. Looking in our chat box, we have Carrie sharing that they're currently in it, and it's amazing and truly does set you up for success. Thank you so much, Carrie. If you have any questions about academic writing or critical thinking, or really anything else on our campus, we'll share information for you to be able to connect with Tracy, Alana, and Kelsey directly to get those questions answered. We have a note here as well, sharing that we do have additional admission requirements for those folks who are looking at pursuing our specializations. So for example, if you're looking at pursuing the Master of Arts in Leadership with a health specialization, We do require leadership experience in a healthcare organization or leadership in a health-related capacity. And that is for the exact reason Catherine had shared earlier. That's because those cohorts, those teaching teams, the assignments, those readings are very targeted to the health sector. So we want to make sure you have that context and understanding before starting the program. If you're looking at the Master of Arts in Leadership with the Executive Leadership Specialization, we have the additional requirement of having a designated organizational leader role with responsibilities to lead others in delivering a common product or outcome with explicit values. And again, if you take a peek at our website, you can dive a little more into what that means or what we're looking for in our applicants. But also, we have our great team of enrollment advisors who are very busy in our chat box, who are happy to answer those questions as well. So we've talked a little bit about our leadership program requirements. And now we're going to quickly flip to our global leadership requirements. So once again, for a Master's of Arts, graduate diploma, and graduate certificate in global leadership, we have our standard admissions and flexible admissions criteria. So for standard admissions, we require a 4-year or comparable undergraduate degree from a recognized post-secondary institution with a minimum GPA of a B, as well as a minimum of 3 years of general leadership experience. Again, you see that little asterisk, so you can head to our website for more information about what could constitute leadership experience. And for the global leadership programs, there's also a requirement to demonstrate significant cross-cultural experience gained through work or travel. And we'll talk, I believe, on the next slide about how you're able to demonstrate that in this application process. For flexible admissions, we're again looking for at least 10 years of professional experience with 3 years of leadership experience, as well as the demonstration of significant cross-cultural experience gained through work or travel. And once again, a note to our academic writing and critical thinking course. I should note that our flexible admissions applications are assessed on a case-by-case basis. So if you have any questions about how your personal experience or your background could fit with flexible admissions into any of these programs, please connect with our offices. We're having those types of conversations all the time. It can help clarify anything that's coming up for you. So how exactly do you go about applying? Well, it begins with an online application. And that application comes with a fee of $126.28. Once that online application is in, a portal opens up for you to submit some supporting documents. Those documents include official transcripts, personal statements, a structured resume, and 2 letters of reference. Our website is a wonderful resource to use when moving through putting these documents together. So it has some tips and tricks and some helpful guidelines for the personal statement. For example, how long should that document be? What sort of questions should you be answering in that statement? This is a great place, particularly for the global leadership programs, to demonstrate that cross-cultural experience. For our structured resume, our website has some helpful hints as to how you can, what categories to include in this document and how they can be organized to make sure that all of your accomplishments shine bright. And then, of course, some more practical information, such as how to submit your official transcripts to our offices and your letters of reference as well from your referees. So, looking now at upcoming intakes. This is a busy slide, so I'm going to read it out quickly just so we make sure we're not getting our dates confused. If you're thinking about starting one of our global leadership programs, whether that be the MA, the graduate diploma, graduate certificate, whether that be on campus or blended, 24-month or 13-month, they will all begin on September 20th, 2021, putting your application deadline at June 20th, 2021. If you're looking at our MA, GD, or GC in leadership, that program begins next, June 7th, 2021, putting its application deadline at May 7th. 2021. And if you're thinking of our MA in leadership and looking at the specializations, the health specialization also begins on September 20th, 2021, putting its application deadline June 20th, 2021. Our MA in leadership with the executive leadership specialization, well, that is starting just around the corner. So that will begin in April 19th of 2021, putting your application deadline to today, March 19th, 2021. So if you are interested in starting that program this year, being a part of the 2021 cohort, we highly recommend getting in that online application today to let us know that you're interested, and we can help you move through getting those supporting documents submitted. We had some questions asked about financial aid, so we want to make sure that we give you all the resources to help explore what we have available to you on our campus. One of our shining stars of our campus is our financial aids and awards teams. These specialists have their fingertips on internal and external sources of funding to help support your educational journey. So they can help answer any questions about loans, awards, research scholarships, or other types of funding as well. So we highly recommend connecting with them. On the slide here, you can see the website and as well as their direct phone lines. And I'll be sure to include that in our follow-up communications from today as well. Oh, and speaking of shining stars on our campus, you have seen many of them today, specifically our enrollment teams in the chat box. So a big, big thank you to Alana, to Tracy. I believe I saw Kelsey in here as well. These folks are beautiful examples of the folks we have part of our enrollment services team to help answer any questions you have about the programs we chatted about today or any others as well. So you can find Tracy and her team at learn.more@rollroads.ca. And if you're joining us internationally, Alana and Kelsey would be more than happy to chat with you at learn.more.international@rollroads.ca. And that brings us to the end of the formal presentation today, but the start of our question and conversations. So before I pass the microphone back to Catherine, I'd just like to say a big thank you to all of you for being here. An invitation to connect with us if you'd like to learn more about any of our programs or if you'd like to keep up to date with what's going on. Everyone will receive a follow-up email from me by the end of the day, so feel free to reply if you have any questions or you'd like to get on lists for further webinars. And speaking of further webinars, we have our next one booked for April 8th, and it is shaping up to be something very, very exciting. Perhaps I can leave it to Catherine to tell us a little bit more about what that webinar is all about, but we'll be sure to share the registration link for that session in the follow-up from today as well. And in connecting with us and getting on our communications list, you end up getting directed to our blog. Our blog is a wonderful way to get an idea of what's going on in the School of Leadership. What kind of conversations are we having? Our blog is a wonderful place to hear from our faculty, our staff, our associate faculty, students, alumni who get to have a voice in expressing their thoughts and feelings about leadership in relation to some things that are happening in our world today. So with that, Catherine, I'm going to stop sharing our screen and invite you to come back on and talk a little bit about our upcoming webinar and any questions that you might have seen in the chat box.
Thanks so much, Selena. And thank you again to Alana and Tracy, who have just done such a fantastic job at keeping up with the rapid pace of questions coming through in the chat. That's great. I think you covered all of them, and there was just one that I was endeavoring to reply to there. So if any of us have missed your questions, please feel free to repeat them now, and I'll pay attention to the chat. But in the meantime, I'll echo what Selena mentioned about the blog. It's been really fun for us. We started this about maybe about a year and a half ago or so. And we came together, the core faculty and staff in the school, and we thought we we would try our best, maybe once a month we'd try to get a post up. But actually it's been so popular and so much fun for us that we're sometimes posting weekly blog posts, and sometimes maybe every 2 weeks or so we've at least got a new blog post up there. So these are the core faculty, sometimes our associate faculty instructors, and sometimes we're featuring the work of our students and our alumni too. So it's kind of a fun way to go in a little bit more depth than what we might offer on our Facebook page. Of course, you can connect with us on Facebook, and we've got lots of different information flowing all the time there too. And as Selena mentioned, we've been running this incredible webinar series. And again, working as a team, I mentioned collaborative leadership earlier as one of our competencies, and we try our best to live this in how we actually show up in the world. So a team of us, including Selena and I, we had to pivot last year. We were planning to host a leadership conference last April. And of course, when the pandemic hit and everything moved from face-to-face to virtual reality, we switched our keynote addresses. We started with just the keynote addresses, and we thought, well, at the very least, we'd love to offer our keynotes in an online setting. And that spun into, I think we've run about 10 webinars now, something like that, Selena. And we have this next one coming up on April 8th. And we call this our Leading in Extraordinary Times webinar series, because aren't we all? These truly are extraordinary times. And we're all called to be our best selves as leaders. We're called into this time that none of us would have predicted. None of us really knew was coming, and we've all been challenged, and we've all had to stretch and grow and learn. And it's been really exciting to run this webinar series. If you check out the blog, you can get recordings of all the webinars we've done to date, a whole range of different topics. And the one coming up on April 8th is pretty exciting. We are excited about it. It's Madame Annamie Paul, who is a newly elected federal party leader. She's the first Black woman, Jewish woman, to be elected as a federal party leader. And she will be talking about diverse and daring leadership. So it's a nonpartisan webinar. So we want to be very clear. It's not about politics, it's about leadership. And so this will be coming up on April 8th. When Selena sends out the follow-up email here, she'll include a link to registration. And much as we do for this webinar that you've been on today, we always send a follow-up message that includes the recording. So you'll be able to hear in case you miss it, or in case you have to pop off a little bit early, you'll be able to follow up with the link and hear what was shared. So we're pretty excited about that. My colleagues, not only Selena, but Sherry Richards, who's the school manager, and Karina Monsalve, who is also supporting us as well. And then a couple of other colleagues, Rebecca Nellums and Cheryl Haycoop, and even the president of the university, Philip Steenkamp. So we've got a whole team of people working to make this webinar possible. It's quite exciting. Tune in if you're interested. April 8th. It just gives you a little taste. This particular webinar is quite information oriented. We're trying to get you the info you need about, to apply if you're interested in applying. Whereas the April 8th webinar is more about the topic of leadership. So you get a little taste, a little flavor of what it's like to learn with us in a virtual experience. So perhaps I'll pause there. I'll just check the chat. Or if anyone would like to practice in Zoom using the raise hand feature, I think we have 2 minutes left. So if anyone would like to ask a verbal question or make a verbal comment, we can do that. And I'll just double check the chat to see if there's anything I've missed here. Selena, would you like to jump in too?
Thank you, Catherine. I just shared in the chat box the link to our blog. So it's clickable for folks because we have some questions about where can we find these exciting recordings. That's where you can find them. And a nice treat that came along with our Leading in Extraordinary Times webinar series is that you'll notice when you check out the blog posts that are correlated with our webinars, you get the webinar recording. There is a swag of resources that were shared from the webinar, and then also a beautiful graphic recording that was done as well. That's an illustration of what was covered in our webinar. So please go to the School of Leadership blog and you can start diving into that information there.
Yeah, great, Selena. So I think we've more or less answered all of the questions to the best of our ability. Erica and others, again, follow up with us. Happy to have more conversations. And, you know, we appreciate that making the choice to start a program, whether it's a certificate or a diploma or a master's degree, this is a big deal. You know, we mentioned 15 to 20 hours a week. You know, that you need to carve out of your busy family lives. Many of you are probably working full time. Many of you have families. So this is a big decision that we know you're not taking lightly. It's our goal, if you're interested in Royal Roads, to get you connected with something that will best serve your needs and your particular educational goals. So again, feel free to reach out to us. We want it to be a good fit for you, a good fit for us, so that we can all, as I said earlier, this is about becoming the best leaders that we possibly can be to step up and serve the world in these very difficult, extraordinary times. So I think that's about it for today. Feel free to check out all of the free resources that are available on the blog if you want to get a sense of what we're up to. Check out our Facebook page and all of the other links that have already been put in the chat. Thank you so much for chiming in today, everyone. I think we're at 1 o'clock on the nose, so we'll stop the recording now. And Selena and I will stick around for just another couple minutes to make sure there aren't any final questions, but that's the end of the recording. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.